Welcome, Jonah. Thanks for joining us, mate.
Too easy. It's my pleasure.
First question I asked, let us know a general background about you, where you started training, like how long you've been wrestling for, stuff like that.
Okay, well, I'm JONAH ROCK, and I started 2007, so I've been wrestling for 6 years now. I started training with Jag Hartley Jackson at the Pro Wrestling Dojo, which back then was Explosive Pro Wrestling Adelaide, which is now 01 Australia. I trained with him. He pretty much taught me everything I know. Big influence on my wrestling as well. My style is very much based around similar way that he wrestles. And then from there I went on to wrestle around South Australia with obviously Snake Pit and Riot City Wrestling. And I've wrestled pretty much every state in Australia as well. MCW, EPW Perth, PWA Sydney, Queensland, and now I am currently contracted for Pro Wrestling Noah.
How long is that contract for, if you don't mind me asking?
This contract is for 3 months.
3-month tour. Beautiful. What were your influences growing up, like wrestling-wise?
Well, pretty much, I started watching wrestling from my earliest memories are watching Hulk Hogan versus King Kong Bundy in a cage. So
WrestleMania 2.
Yeah, WrestleMania 2. I had it on videotape. My uncle gave it to me, and yeah, ever since I could remember, I was watching wrestling. I had my uncle was actually a huge fan of wrestling, and we used to live with him, so I just grew up with it. But influence-wise, obviously, as a little kid, Hulk Hogan was the man. Just seeing him come out and rip his shirt and then beat up all the bad guys, I just loved it. As I got a bit older, I guess around the Attitude Era, Stone Cold was my favorite. Stone Cold for WWF, and Chris Benoit, or he who shall not be named.
Voldemort of wrestling.
WCW. Yeah, maybe edit that bit out. And then around the age of 13, my best friend Nick Miller, actually his name, he discovered independent wrestling and Japanese wrestling. And the first independent wrestling I ever saw was Ring of Honor, and then the first ever Japanese match I can recall seeing was a Kenta and Marufuji tag match. So,
wow! And now you've worked Kenta.
I know, yeah, I've worked both of them, and on this schedule, on this actual tour, I get to work both of them again, singles. So
wow!
Really cool stuff.
Yeah. What's your schedule like, sort of in Japan at the moment? Is it just rush, or are you training and then you're getting to see some of the sites, or?
Not really seeing a whole lot of sites. I mean, it's pretty crazy where the dorm and dojo is where I stay at the moment. You can actually see like Tokyo Tower and Rainbow Bridge, like pretty big sites from where I shower. So it's sort of just in your backyard, and you don't really take it in very much.
So it's a sightseeing a wash at the same time.
Exactly. So we were on a big tour last month, so went on tour. It's just a lot of matches and stuff, and then pretty much at the end of each tour, there's a week or so break, maybe a week, 2 weeks, where it's just training. So I've just gone through about a week and a half of just pure training, and tomorrow I start the new tour for the month.
And how long does that tour go for?
The tour goes for 2 weeks, and there is 10 shows in those 2 weeks.
Oh, wow.
And we travel, for this tour, it's some dates in Tokyo, dates in Osaka, which we'll travel to, and I think the furthest place we travel to is about maybe 10 hours away, which is going to be a long time in a bus.
Wow. Was Japan always a goal for you, or have you set your sights on the US sort of thing?
Well, Japan was definitely, it was when I first started wrestling. I can vividly remember Jag Hartley Jackson asking each and every person that did the tryout, what is your goal for wrestling? And I remember saying, wrestling in Japan. So it was something that I always wanted to do, and as soon as I got the opportunity to come here to Pro Wrestling Noah, I was stoked, and especially being with the fellow TMDK guys, Shane Haste and Mike Nichols.
Yep.
It's a great experience. Like, I watched before I started wrestling in 2006, Mikey and Jag wrestled in Korakuen Hall for New Japan, And I remember watching that in high school and being like, that's what I want to do. And then I got to wrestle in Korakuen with Mikey, so it's a pretty surreal experience.
Yeah, I can imagine. How much have you had to adapt your style to the Japanese workers?
Sorry, someone just handed me a hamburger.
Oh, that's nice.
It is. The Japanese style is it's different to the Australian style. I guess the Australian styles are a bit more Americanized. That's Shane Hayes you can hear in the background. I don't know if you can hear him.
Oh, it's me. I said the hairstyle.
I guess, yeah, the Australian style is a bit more westernized. But I was lucky to be trained by Harley Jackson, who actually taught me in a Japanese style. So it's easy to adapt to, I think. I don't think everyone back home could get it, but I think there's a lot of guys back home that could definitely come in and pick it up really easy.
Beautiful. How do you bridge the language gap in your matches? I can imagine that would be a bit of
a given.
Not very well actually. The language barrier is a very difficult thing. So a lot of it out there is just you go with the flow almost. But yeah, there's not much you can do about language barrier really. So that's probably the hardest thing when it comes to wrestling in Japan is, other than the hits that you take.
Is it fairly stiff style?
Yes, it is. Like, I like to work a stiffer sort of style myself anyway. Not where I'm hurting someone, like where it's dangerous, but a nice, clean style of wrestling. So it's very much like that here. I think Pro Wrestling Noah is very hard hitting. Like, I think even just the same as back home or in America, each company in Japan is slightly different.
Yeah.
And I think Noah is one of the harder hitting ones.
So it's just a matter of sort of like adjusting your style to theirs.
Yeah, exactly. It's just adjusting, but I don't like to adjust too much because obviously one of the main reasons I'm here is because I'm different. And
yep.
If you're gonna, I think that's a problem when people go overseas and they change too much. Like, obviously you need to change, you want to be better, but you also need to stand out. You can't just become the same as everything else.
Exactly. You've definitely got a sort of look that would stand you apart anyway.
Yeah, I'm glad I was blessed with my heritage.
One of your first matches over there, you wrestled Kenta. Could you sort of believe that that's one of the first ones you got picked with?
Yeah, I didn't believe it at all. Like, it was my second match was against Kenta, who is the GHC champion at the moment. So I was very nervous going into it, like very nervous, but luckily it came out great, and I had a great match with Kenta, and I would rank him as one of the best in the world. It's just every night that he wrestles, he's insane. He just wrestles full out every time, whether it's a house show, TV, he wrestles the same.
Do you feel like your level lift just working with him, or?
Yeah, definitely. You can feel it. There's just, I guess he's one of those guys that probably just got like almost like an aura to him. Like,
yeah,
it's a big match feel every time with him. So I'm definitely looking forward to getting to wrestle him again.
And you, of course, you're one half of Sex Rock with Elliot Sexton. How did that partnership come about?
Pretty much when we were in when it was EPW Adelaide, we got teamed up on one show, just as Elliot Sexton, and back then I was J-Rock. And then I guess they liked us as a team, and then it became a more regular thing, and we thought of, obviously Sex Rock, and we started from there, and then we stuck together as a tag team, and we just kept doing the tags, and it worked out really well. And
which is quite unusual nowadays.
As well.
It's quite unusual nowadays, sort of like in wrestling, in Australian wrestling, or in wrestling period, for tag teams to stick together.
Yeah, definitely. And definitely because I guess it's an odd dynamic, like Jonah Rock and Elliot Sexton. They're both very different characters, but it seems to work.
Yeah.
So I guess at the moment, like, I haven't seen Sexton in 7 months or something, just because we've both been off doing our own things, and I'm sure he's still got more big things ahead of him as well with what he's been doing over in the States and whatnot. So, and hopefully I'll be back here. So who knows when Sex Rock will reunite.
And how did the association with TDMK come about?
TMDK was started by Shane and Mike that are here with me now. Shane and Mike approached me and Sexton about, just coming into the group, and like they wanted the group to sort of enlarge a bit, and the fact that we're all from another state as well, have members from another state. And straight away I said, yeah, we'll join.
Yeah.
I saw the possibilities and, maybe coming here. And it did definitely open the door for me.
So they sort of put your name forward to help you get a contract with Noah?
Pretty much. Like, I think Pro Wrestling Noah were looking for people, and because Shane and Mike have been so successful here, and they're loved by the crowd here, and they're just some of the best wrestlers that I know. Shane and Mason, I guess they wanted another TMDK member.
Yeah. I talked to Matt Silver not long ago, and he rates Shane Hayes very highly. Yeah,
he's insane. He's just like, he does things athletically I haven't seen any other person do, and just for his size as well. He's a big guy, and Mike's the same. Mike's a really big guy, but he can just go, and they're just very smart wrestlers as well. Yeah. Like, I definitely think they could be in WWE or be anywhere they wanted to be.
So those two have wrestled in ROH. Has there been any thought about you maybe trying to bridge that market?
It's something I never really thought of. Like, my goal was always to wrestle in Japan, and now that I'm here, I definitely want to continue, to keep coming back to Japan and doing this. But it's one of those things, I guess, if you can get to one place, why not try and go even further? My stepdad back home, actually, before I left here, as I said about wrestling in Japan, what a great opportunity it is. He said, if you're good enough to wrestle there, then there's nothing else to stop you from wrestling anywhere else in the world.
Exactly.
And I thought about it. I'm like, it is true, but for now, I'm happy to try and keep coming back here. But it could be something that I definitely think about in the future.
What are some of your favourite promotions in Australia that you've competed in or you've worked for?
I'd have to say my heart is very much with EPW, whether it be EPW Adelaide or EPW Perth. Like, EPW Perth, I used to watch their highlight videos as a teenager and think it was insane, and it was another reason why I started Australian wrestling. And then I used to go to local shows, and my favourites were Jag Hartley Jackson, Damian Slater, Jason Cooper, and Havoc. So getting to then train with those guys and come up in the game with those guys was a fantastic experience for me. And I love wrestling for MCW as well in Melbourne. It's just a really cool place to wrestle, and the crowd is great, and all the guys there in Melbourne I enjoy hanging out with.
So when you started your training with EPW Adelaide, was it just like an open tryout, or was it just something that you approached them on the side, or?
Pretty much I wanted to start wrestling when I was in high school, and the EPW Adelaide hadn't started then. It was joint promotions, and the wrestling school was about maybe an hour and a half away from where I lived. I wanted to join, but my mum didn't want me to join until I finished high school. So as soon as I finished high school, I was 18, EPW Adelaide had just opened. I wanted to do a tryout, and I contacted them about when the tryout was, and I didn't have any money for the tryout, so luckily my beautiful fiance, who's back home at the moment, she funded the tryout for me. And then I went and did the tryout, it was two of the hardest days of my life. Like, I could barely walk, my muscles were dead, but at the end of it I got through it and I started training. And I actually did my tryout with Jet Armstrong. We did it together. And so we started together at the same time. So
yeah, I know when I had my tryout at RCW, you hit me with my first clothesline, and it was one of the hardest. I was like, wow, this is really hard.
Yeah, I think it's a big shock to a lot of people. A lot of people are like definitely people that I have seen come through tryouts and stuff that think like, wrestling is hard hitting, but it's pretty fake or whatever. When you actually get in the ring and you take a hit, you're like, actually, maybe not.
Yeah.
Like
that first one where your head rattles.
Yeah, exactly. Especially when you haven't learned how to take any bumps or break fall or anything. You're just like, but
who are some of the favourite guys you've worked in Australia or in Japan even?
Australian-wise, probably Jimmy Scarlett. Oh, he's now Johnny Barnes.
Yes,
so
yes.
he's in there now. I had a great series of matches with him that ended in a street fight, and like we're very close friends, so it was really cool to do that. I like wrestling, obviously with Elliot Sexton. I've never wrestled against him, but wrestling with him is great. I also liked working with Damian Slater, even though we had one match which was close to the start of my career. But I'd like to definitely wrestle him again. Him and Alex Kingston from Perth, very good wrestler. But I've only wrestled him. I've wrestled him twice, but I really want to wrestle him again when I get back home.
What are the spaces between the contracts? So like from when you come home to when you'd probably go back if you did?
It all sort of depends. It's when they need people, and if they have other Gaijin wrestlers over here, and it all depends. I'll find out closer to the end of my 3-month stay here, and then hopefully maybe come back later in this year or start of next year again, and then see how I go from there. And it all depends with my fiance back home as well. Like, I feel bad. She's so nice. She's let me, chase my dream and do my wrestling, but at the same time, I've left her with the burden of bills back home and paying the rent and stuff. So
yeah,
it's something I have to work out with her as well, because 3 months away from the person you love is very hard.
Yeah.
But it's something that I want to do just because I love pro wrestling, and I love Japanese wrestling so much.
Yeah. And it's also, I mean, that's when you know you're with the right person, when they will support you through all that stuff.
Exactly, yeah. She's been very supportive throughout my whole career, actually. She's always, I've taken a lot of time, whether it's training or whatever shows and going away into state and stuff, and she's always been very supportive. So I owe a lot to her when it comes to being able to wrestle and do what I want to do. And hopefully, in return, I can make something out of it and give it back to her.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, thanks very much for joining us today, Jonah. Before you go, is there any Facebook or Twitter plugs you want to put out?
You can look up my fan page on Facebook, which is just JONAH ROCK. There's lots of updates and stuff on there. There's also the TMDK fan page, which is just TMDK. There's a TMDK Twitter, and there is sexrockversustheworld.com, which is all Elliot Sexton and JONAH ROCK stuff.
Beautiful. Well, thank you very much for joining us tonight, mate.
Thank you.
Thank you,
See
sir.
you from Japan.